Hello again, gamers. Welcome back for another episode of Grokking Twilight Imperium. I'm the board game captain, and today I'm going to be doing a deep dive on the tactics that I would use with the Xxcha Kingdom. So, I want to give a big thank you to Craftsman MC, one of my viewers who requested that I cover the Xxcha Kingdom in an episode of Grokking Twilight Imperium. This episode is for you. All right, so before we get started, I do want to say I've got a ton of links in the description down below. Links to BoardGameCaptain.com, which is a great hub for all things Board Game Captain, and Lynn and I have started doing semi-regular blog posts over there, as well as links to my Patreon. If you're in a position to and would like to support the channel, you can head over to my Patreon, link in the description down below, and also a link to my Teespring store. If you'd like to get yourself some cool gamer gear, t-shirts, mugs, Board Game Captain merchandise, you can head over there, link in the description down below. All right, so the Xxcha Kingdom, the Space Turtles, as a lot of people like to call them. They are a rather defensive faction that have a lot of abilities that have to do with diplomacy and politics. While not being slouches in combat, like certain other factions, like, say, the Jolnar, they don't take negatives in combat. They're nothing special about combat. A lot of their abilities are more about ways to avoid combat or even ways to take planets without combat, which is very interesting and different. These are kind of a pretty unique faction amongst all of the factions in Twilight Imperium. So what do you get to start with the Xxcha Kingdom? You get a 2-planet system, Archon Ren and Archon Tau. Archon Ren is not half bad. It's got 2 resources, that's pretty low. It's got 3 influence, that's not bad. And then Archon Tau has 1 of each, 1 resource, 1 influence. So together, this is a decent amount of resources and a really nice amount of influence. However, splitting up the resources like that is going to cause you a bit of a problem with your production limit on your space dock, because remember, space docks only have can only produce a number of units equal to their resource value plus 2. So you're probably going to put it in Archon Ren, so you can at least produce 4 units at a time, but that is a bit restrictive. So you're probably going to want to get the best bang for your buck. So for producing in your home system, for instance, you're probably going to want to do things like instead of producing infantry, producing mechs, etc. Go for bigger things as long as you have the money to spend on it. And when you get out there, you're probably going to want to take a planet that has a 3 resource value, so you can get a production limit of 5 out there on a planet. If you can, you're probably going to want to save one with 3 resource value to be fairly close to your home system, so that you can eventually get a space dock on it, so you can produce a lot more, because this is a little bit limiting, but it is, again, a decent amount of resources and a really good amount of influence, which will come in handy for some of the strategies I'm going to recommend for the Xxcha Kingdom. So next, I'd like to talk about the starting fleet with the Xxcha Kingdom. So what do you get? You get a carrier, you get 4 ground troops, 2 cruisers, you get 3 fighters, a space dock, and a PDS. So this is a fairly diverse group of units, and you have a lot of units. You're probably going to leave the 3 fighters to defend your space dock in your home system, because your space dock does have a capacity of holding up to 3 fighters. And the starting carrier only has a capacity of 4, so you can put all 4 of those ground troops on it if you want. And you could colonize even 3-planet systems very easily then with your starting fleet. Now later, after upgrading your carriers, they will get a capacity of 1, and then you could start splitting off and colonizing multiple systems at once, even with your starting fleet. But of course, that will take a little while, because in order to upgrade your carrier, you do require already having 1 green, 1 yellow, and 1 red tech. And at the start of the game, you only start with 1 yellow tech. Next, I'm going to talk about the faction abilities for the Xxcha Kingdom. So they have 2 abilities, which are Peace Accords and Quash. So Peace Accord says, after you resolve the primary or secondary ability of the Diplomacy Strategy card, you may gain control of 1 planet other than Mechatol Rex that does not contain any units and is in a system that is adjacent to a planet you control. This is a phenomenal ability, especially since you only have 1 ship in your starting fleet that can carry those large number of ground troops. You could take them to go colonize a system with lots of planets. You see, like, maybe you put a 3-planet system adjacent to your starting system. You go in, you colonize all 3 of those planets. Great, but usually 3-planet systems, each one is kind of lesser than a single planet system. Then maybe you also put adjacent to your home system, or adjacent to that system, a system that has 1 really good planet that has, say, resources of 3, if you've taken the diplomacy in the first round, which is very easy to do, very few factions want to grab diplomacy on round 1, you can then just be like, okay, now that planet's mine too. And it's a great reason to want to take the diplomacy a lot, even in early rounds where you're not really preventing other people from attacking you, but you can use its ability to get to ready up to 2 of your exhausted planets that you control and then get a new planet, which can be really awesome, because if you took that 3-planet system, of course, those planet cards come into play exhausted, you could unexhaust a couple of them and then take that new planet, which is really fantastic. You'll turn what is normally not a very fast colonizing faction into possibly a very fast colonizing faction because of this ability. Plus, being able to refresh those planets means your build, even in round 1, will allow you to get a bunch of extra resources towards it. So you'll probably be able to build 4 units that you would want to build to get a second colonizing fleet out fairly quickly. So even though they start out with not a top tier colonizing fleet, you can pretty quickly get set up like a top tier colonizer with this little trick. It is possible. Now, their second ability is Quash. When an agenda is revealed, you may spend 1 token from your strategy pool to discard that agenda and reveal 1 agenda from the top of the deck. Players vote on this agenda instead. So this is going to very much help once you have a political phase and once you're voting on agendas. You have a way to get rid of an agenda you don't like. So someone else took the politics card and they used it to set up an agenda that would be really good for them, but maybe is not very good for you. You can just get rid of it and be like, you know what, we're going to vote on something else. I don't like this agenda. I don't want to risk it coming into play. And that's pretty cool, and especially because these guys do thematically head towards politics and diplomacy quite a bit, because they're supposed to be a race of philosophers, diplomats, and politicians. This is a really characterful ability. While it may not be as actually game rules wise as powerful as Peace Accords, which is a far more useful and powerful ability, it is a super characterful ability. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the flagship for the Xxcha Kingdoms, because they have a very unique and interesting flagship. It has a very unique ability that is really cool and fits into some of their technology and some of the things they do. It is called the Lankara Sodu. Now, the Lankara Sodu has a cost. It has 2 attacks at a 7, which makes it roughly equivalent to 2 cruisers. It's not bad. Not great, but not bad. It has movement of 1 and 3 capacity. That's pretty standard. Then it has sustained damage, also standard. Then it has 2 of the very different abilities. It has a Space Cannon 5, so it hits on a 5 or better, really good. Times 3, gets 3 Space Cannon shots, and it has the ability that you may use this unit's Space Cannon against ships that are in adjacent systems. So parking this in an area of the galaxy you want to defend can be amazing. Getting 3 Space Cannon shots and anytime units move into adjacent systems or its system that hit on 5s or better can be really devastating. You can really soften up enemy fleets significantly before they even get to you. It can be a really wonderful deterrent, and deterrents are great for the Xxcha Kingdom because you kind of want to avoid battle except for the ones you want to pick to have, when, like, for instance, taking Mechatol Rex. Now, the rest of the Xxcha Kingdom units are all the same as normal units. They don't have any other units that are specific to them. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about their agent, commander, hero, and mech. So for the agent, which of course you start with at the beginning of the game, the agent is Grokuto Rin. The ability for the agent is action. Exhaust this card to ready any planet. If that planet is in a system that is adjacent to a planet you control, you may remove 1 infantry from that planet and return it to its reinforcements. This ability is awesome because it has 2 purposes, and they're both great. So the first purpose is obvious. If you've just taken a planet or you've just spent a planet, you can use this to refresh that planet so that you may use it even though you have just taken the planet, or use it again if you've already used it. Really useful, definitely a good use, but there's a trickier use. The second part of it, of removing an infantry from a planet if it is adjacent to a system you control, this is the amazing and interesting way to use this, because you can ready one of your opponent's planets in a system adjacent to you. And let's say it's a planet where they've only got one ground troop on it and you really want that planet. You can be like, well, I'm going to ready it for you. I'm going to remove the ground troop. Then you can use, in your next turn on this round, you could, if as long as they don't get more infantry on that planet or more ground troops on that planet, you can use diplomacy if you have taken it this round and trigger peace accords. After you resolve the primary or secondary ability of diplomacy, you may gain control of one planet other than Mechatol Rex that does not contain any units. So this is a way to remove that one guy they threw on there for defense just so you couldn't take it on a whim, and now you can take it on a whim. Now this is tricksy. It may not work much because it may be the sort of thing that once your opponents see you do it, they're going to try to defend key planets better. But most factions, other than the ones that have tons of ground troops to go around, most factions don't have a ton of ground troops and aren't able to leave multiple ground troops on every planet on your border. They'd run out of ground troops and would be unable to colonize or unable to defend themselves on their other border. So being able to do this, you can needle and pick away at planets of a player that you are already kind of having hostilities with. I don't recommend doing this for everyone you are a neighbor with, or they're all going to gang up on you. But if you have one person who's like winning the game and you're wanting to nip them in the bud, this is a good way to start picking away at their power base and taking planets from them one at a time without even having to have a fight, which is what's really interesting because you actually do it through these political subterfuge kind of ways where you use your agent ability to remove their one ground troop that's there and then use diplomacy and peace accords to take the planet. Now next I'd like to talk about the commander. So the commander for the Xxcha Kingdom is Elder Kanoj. Now Elder Kanoj is unlocked when you have planets with a combined influence of 12. So here's the thing. You already start with 4 influence. You are a third of the way there. If you set up planets intelligently, so you have a lot of influence close to you or in a line between you and Mechatol Rex, you can very quickly get that 12 influence, especially with the tricks I was talking about, being able to steal either unoccupied planets or even previously occupied planets that didn't have a lot of defense on them. Now, once you get that 12 influence, you unlock Elder Kanoj's ability, which is each planet you exhaust to cast votes provides 1 additional vote. Game effects cannot prevent you from voting on an agenda. This is a really cool pair of abilities. So first off, you're going to have better voting power than anyone else in the galaxy. Once the political phases start, once you start voting on agendas, you are going to be the person who is controlling, unless everyone else in the game is really ganging up against you, you are going to be the person who's controlling what things you vote on. Plus, combine this with the agent's ability, and you can refresh a planet with a lot of influence, so you can always get that ton of votes to be able to help you get the agendas that you want to do. This is a really cool commander. I quite like it. I think it's very characterful for the Xxcha Kingdom, and it really helps, again, with the political phase. Next, I want to talk about the hero. Now, the hero is Xxcha Grom, the Council's Heart. As always, they are then unlocked when you've scored 3 objectives, and then they become Political Data Nexus, Voice of the Council. Action. You may discard 1 law from play. Look at the top 5 cards of the agenda deck. Choose 2 to reveal, and resolve each as if you had cast 1 vote for an outcome of your choice. Discard the rest. Other players cannot resolve abilities during this action, then purge this card. So now, it's very important to understand what exactly this is saying. You're resolving the agenda as if you had cast a vote and no one else gets to cast votes. They clarified that a little bit in the FAQ. No one else gets to cast votes on these. So you get to look through the top 5 cards after getting rid of a law that you didn't like. Pick 2 that you want to happen and just have them happen. There are some amazing things in there. things that can directly just get you points, or things that can really help you and make you far more powerful. This could potentially, depending on what the top 5 cards are in that deck, and getting to pick 2 of the 5 does give you a nice choice of amongst a lot. There are some in there that this could potentially be game winning, depending on how close you already are to winning the game of Twilight Imperium. This could be a game winning ability. Even when it's not a game winning ability, this is going to be amazingly fun ability that lets you totally change up how the game is being played for the remainder of the game. It's probably something that's not going to happen until late game, mid to late game, but once it does, this could be really, really freaking awesome. I very much love the hero ability for the Xxcha Kingdom. Lastly, I want to talk about their mech, because their mech continues with their theme of having really good space cannons that was started by their flagship. So the mech is the Indomitus. Now the Indomitus is a 2-cost, 6 combat, sustained damage, that's all as per normal. Then it has a space cannon of 8, and it says you may use this unit's space cannon against ships that are in adjacent systems. So throwing these guys around on your border along with your flagship can set up these webs of space cannons, again, as a major deterrent, making your opponent very unlikely to want to come through the gauntlet of space cannons that they would have to go through, usually having to get hit at least twice by multiple space cannons before even making it to a system that they would want to invade. So again, these, along with the flagship and a key location, could be a big deterrent to protecting your borders. You'd be like, okay, maybe you have better ships than me, maybe you could win a fight, but how much damage are you going to take before you even get to that fight? Will you still have a better fleet than mine? It's up to you if you want to roll the dice. And that's kind of what it's about, because the Xxcha Kingdom are kind of the F around and find out faction. They're like, do you want to mess with me? I mean, I got lots of tricks and funky things I can do over here. I'm going to talk more about those funky things in a moment. So the next thing I want to talk about is they start with one technology. So the starting tech they get is the Graviton Laser Systems. Now this is a tech that is yellow and normally requires you to already have one yellow tech to get. So it is pretty cool that they start a little bit up the tech tree. And it says, you may exhaust this card before one or more of your units use Space Cannon. Hits produced by those units must be assigned to non-fighter ships if able. So this is a fantastic tech to start with for the Xxcha Kingdom, again, because of all their cool Space Cannon abilities. Again, this is going to very much help as a deterrent when you're throwing out your mechs and your flagship out there on your borders. Now, they have 2 faction-specific techs. One requires you to have 2 yellow techs, the other requires you to have 1 green, so neither of which are going to come out right away unless you get some really good technology specialties near your home system. If you could start with 1 yellow or 1 green near your home system, then you might be able to get one of these out. So, but if you don't, assuming that you didn't, I'm going to talk about some other techs I would recommend. I've got 6 techs that I recommend for the Xxcha Kingdom, either specifically because they're really good for them, or they would help you fill prerequisites to get some of the other techs that I am recommending. I don't actually expect you to get all of these in one game, but these are ones that a combination of these could be really good for the Xxcha Kingdom, and I'm going to explain why. And then, of course, some of them are going to very much help you get out your faction-specific techs, which they have 2, which are very good and I do recommend. So first thing I want to talk about is a green tech. Now this green tech that I recommend is the basic green tech to get if you did not have a technology specialty adjacent to your home system to grab for green. If you did, just use that and grab your faction-specific green tech. But if you didn't and you need to grab a green tech, I recommend Psychoarchaeology. You can use technology specialties on planets you control without exhausting them, even if those planets are exhausted. During the action phase, you can exhaust planets you control that have technology specialties to gain 1 trade good. So this is incredibly useful for the Xxcha Kingdom if you have to grab a green tech before getting your faction-specific one, because 1, it's going to help you to be able to use your faction techs to be able to climb up the tech trees faster, and 2, you have the agent, which allows you to refresh one of your planets. You could use this to get a trade good and then refresh it and still use that planet during this round. Yeah, it's still a decent tech. It's not integral. You don't have to get this one. So if you're able to get a technology specialty to get their faction-specific green tech, I would still actually recommend that over this. But this is a decent starting green tech. Next, I want to talk about the yellow techs. Now, you're going to need 2 yellow techs or 1 yellow tech and a yellow technology specialty on a planet to be able to get their yellow technology that is faction specific for them. So you start with the graviton laser system, which gives you one yellow tech. If you're able to get a yellow technology specialty, you might want to just jump right into their faction specific tech. But if you can't, this is a decent one to get your second yellow tech, and that is predictive intelligence. At the start of your turn, you may exhaust this card to redistribute your command tokens. When you cast votes during the agenda phase, you may cast 3 additional votes. If you do, the outcome you voted for is not resolved. Exhaust this card. So here's the thing. You're already leaning into all this ability for politics when you're voting on agendas. This can be really good to give you 3 extra votes. Plus, the ability to redistribute your tokens is not bad. This is, again, not a must-have, but if you're going to pick one to be able to get a second yellow, if you weren't able to get a yellow technology specialty, to be able to get the faction-specific tech, this one is pretty good. Okay, so now those two are really, again, just to get the prerequisites for the faction-specific tech, so I want to talk about them a little bit before I move on and talk about the rest of the techs that I recommend from the general tech deck. So first I want to talk about Nullification Field. It requires you to have 2 yellow techs, and it says, after another player activates a system that contains one or more of your ships, you may exhaust this card and spend 1 token from your strategy pool, immediately end that player's turn. So when a player is moving up to attack you, they move into range of your space cannons, you blast them apart, but maybe you don't do enough damage, you don't think you're going to be able to take them, and they're about to move again. They do warfare, they take the token off the board, they're going to move again, you just be like, nope, done. You're done, and because you put your token in my system, it stays there, you're not going to be able to invade that system this round. You could try to go somewhere else, but you're not going there. This is an amazingly tricksy way to mess with people who are trying to invade you, and then it buys you some extra time to build up your fleets or do something else politically or diplomatically to try to resolve the situation. Now, the other one, which is a green tech and requires you to have 1 green tech, is Instinct Training. You may exhaust this card and spend 1 token from your strategy pool when another player plays an action card. Cancel that action card. There are a large number of amazing action cards that can really catch you by surprise and mess with you. The ability to once per round exhaust this and spend a strategy token to just be like, nope, that action card doesn't happen, sorry, is fantastic. Now be aware, both of these require strategy tokens, so you're going to have to be careful about the spending of your strategy tokens. It's not quite as bad as certain other factions that spend strategy tokens for tons of abilities, but once you start using these 2 technologies, once you have them and you start using them, you are going to want to keep an eye on your surplus of strategy tokens and be careful that you don't run out. Now, the other technologies, the other general technologies I recommend, first one I want to talk about is the top tier yellow tech, because if you either got a second yellow tech and then your faction specific tech, or you had a technology prerequisite and got your faction specific tech, either way, you can get the top tier yellow tech, which is integrated economy, and this can be really good for the Xxcha Kingdom. After you gain control of a planet, you may produce any number of units on that planet that have a combined cost equal to or less than the planet's resource value. So the reason this is so good is, one, again, we've already talked about that they don't start with a huge amount of production, so this is going to allow you to produce outside of the normal production step when you do a tactical action, so that is really good. But also, we talked about the fact that they have tricksy ways of stealing planets from people. They can ready a planet, remove a ground troop, and then play diplomacy and steal that planet. And once you do, you can be like, well, I stole that planet, I'm going to immediately produce. Fantastic. So I'm going to have a big fleet there, or a bunch of ground troops there that are now going to defend that planet and system, or maybe both. So yeah, this is one I would highly recommend getting. Definitely a really good tech. Next, I want to talk about the one red tech I definitely recommend you get. There are other red techs you might want to get if you want to strengthen your fleet, but this is one I think would be very useful for the Xxcha Kingdom, and that is plasma scoring. When 1 or more of your units use bombardment or space cannon, one of those units may roll 1 additional die. Again, you're going to be setting up nets of space cannons all over the place. This is going to be really useful for those getting the extra die. Next, I want to talk about a couple blue techs I recommend, I think would be really good. So the first one is Dark Energy Tap. Now, Dark Energy Tap is specifically so you can get the tech I really recommend. So if you're able to get a blue technology specialty planet, you can avoid Dark Energy Tap. Just skip it. Again, because you're not going to be able to get all of these. Plus, you're going to want to upgrade some of your units, specifically like your PDSs, to get long-range space cannons on them as well as all the other units you have. So you might want to skip this if you can get a blue technology specialty. But if you can't, this is a decent one to get for your first blue tech, and that is Dark Energy tab. After you perform a tactical action in a system that contains a frontier token, if you have one or more ships in that system, explore that token. Your ship can, and then this is a separate ability, your ships can retreat into adjacent systems that do not contain other players' units, even if you do not have units or control of planets in that system. So this gives you a way to escape from fleets that are likely to wipe you out, and it also gives you a way to explore those frontier tokens, so it can be quite useful. Now, the main reason for getting that is being able to get a Sling Relay. Sling Relay is action. Exhaust this card to produce one ship in any system that contains one of your space docks. This is a really good ability to have, again, because of your limited production at the start of the game. This could be a really great way to produce a ship outside of the normal production step. Okay, so now I want to talk about what strategy cards I recommend to you. So first off, Diplomacy. So now this is a weird one. Diplomacy is not a normal strategy card that I would totally recommend you grab, but you should grab Diplomacy, and you should grab it a lot. Because its ability of being able to trigger the peace accords from the beginning of the game is going to allow you to very quickly colonize multiple planets. Now, if it's available, you could grab Warfare instead and use it to do the same thing, to move your carrier's fleet a second time. But Warfare is a very high desired strategy card early game, and lots of other people are going to be gunning for it. If you're not able to get it, just grab Diplomacy and colonize one of those really powerful single planet systems without even having to use any units to do it. And then later game, again, you can use it to free up a planet in a opponent's controlled system by removing the one ground troop they have there, by using your agent ability, and then again use this to colonize that system without actually having to enter a combat or battle. Which, so this is going to be a really big one. In addition to that, again, like I already said, Warfare is possible. Technology, because there are a lot of good techs for the Xxcha Kingdom that are really going to help you out, and you really want to get your faction-specific techs at some point. Construction is going to be important once in a while, because you're going to want, once you have a 3-resource planet somewhere out there in the galaxy, you're going to want to place a space deck on it. You're also going to want to place PDSs in key positions to get that expanding net of space cannons along your borders, and you're going to want to upgrade those PDSs so they can fire into adjacent systems, just like your flagship and just like your mechs. In addition, of course, politics will occasionally be useful, but also leadership, because both of your technologies cause you to use a lot of tokens. Using leadership to get top initiative and also to get some extra tokens to place in your tactics, strategy, and fleet is going to be occasionally very necessary. And of course, finally, using Imperial to go searching for specific secret objectives that are going to be really good for you to complete. This is, of course, also going to be useful. So, throughout the game, all of these are going to have their times where you're going to want to use them. But very big for you is going to be Diplomacy. You're going to want to get Diplomacy a lot. And then secondarily to that, Warfare, Technology, Construction, and Leadership are going to be other really important ones. The other ones, like Imperial and Politics, will be situational, but will also be useful. Okay, so finally I'd like to talk about what secret objectives are the really good ones to grab when you're looking through them, getting them with the Imperial, either the primary or secondary abilities of the Imperial card. One of the reasons, of course, that Imperial is not going to be super important is you can just use the secondary ability to get these if someone else grabs it, and that's fine. But these are all some great secret objectives for the Xxcha Kingdom. So first, we have Adapt New Strategies, Own 2 Faction Technologies. You're going to want both of these. They're really good. They're really tricksy. They're really great ways to cancel really good cards, as well as cancel invasions. You're going to want them, so that's going to be a good card. The next one is Mechanize the Military. Have one mech on each of 4 different planets. Again, you're going to be setting up a net of space cannons with your mechs and your PDSs and your flagship, so you're going to want to get out a ton of mechs. This is just going to coincide with your plans. Next, we have Establish a Hegemony. Control planets that have a combined influence value of at least 12. Again, you start with 4 influence in your starting system. That's a third of the way there. And you need 12 already to release your commander. If you grab this one, it's going to be two birds, one stone situation. It's going to be very good for you. So that's going to be one you're going to really like. Next, we have use space cannon to destroy the last of a player's ships in a system. Now, you start with the ability to cause all of those space cannon attacks to do damage only to capital ships because of the graviton laser system. You have a flagship and mechs that all have space cannons. The flagship in particular has some great space cannons. You can throw down lots of PDSs, and if you upgrade the PDSs so they can fire into adjacent systems, this could be something that could very much happen when someone, not really realizing how deadly your PDSs are, decides to come flying at you. You move your flagship over there. They move adjacent to your system and get hit with the PDSs from the flagship, a couple of the mechs, and one of your PDSs, and you activate the graviton laser system, and you wipe out all of their capital ships. And of course, without any capacity in that system, the fighters go away as well. That could be really awesome, and you could definitely have this happen. It's probably going to be a mid to late game that you get this secret objective, but it's definitely possible. Next, we have Stake Your Claim. Control a planet in a system that contains a planet controlled by another player. Now, this is very feasible with the Xxcha Kingdom. It's possibly one of the most feasible factions to get this secret objective with, because of the trick that I went over a couple times about getting to ready one of their planets, remove the one ground troop that's on it, and then play diplomacy and take that planet. If it's a multi-planet system, like a 2 or 3 planet system, you will have just gotten Stake Your Claim. Next, we have Drive the Debate. You are a planet you control or elected by an agenda. We've already talked about how these guys are some of the most powerful political faction, one of the most powerful political factions in the whole game. Definitely very likely to happen. And finally, Dictate Policy. There are 3 or more laws in play. Once you start having agenda phases, you are going to want to continue to have agenda phases, because you are going to get to use those agendas to really change how the current game is played in ways that benefit you. So you are going to start taking politics once the agenda phase starts happening, and you're going to use your abilities that you have with Quash to pick the right agendas for you. And yeah, you're going to want to have a lot of laws in play, but laws that favor the Xxcha Kingdom. So that's it. That is how you play the Xxcha Kingdom. You use a lot of politics and diplomacy and tricksy tactics to avoid combats so that you can focus in on the specific combats you want to do. You use tricksy diplomacy to be able to take planets without combat, where you literally just take them on a whim, even planets that were already controlled by other players. These guys play very uniquely and very interestingly. I think they did a great job of improving their uniqueness from 3rd edition to 4th edition. They were good in 3rd edition, but they're far more interesting in 4th edition, where they traded just some abilities they had about being better on the defense for their new abilities with tricksy ways to stop invasions, which is really cool and really interesting. I really like the Xxcha Kingdom, and I think if you want to play a defensive faction that does not fight all the time and only fights when it wants to, these are a really cool faction to try. If you feel I missed anything, feel free to comment down below. If you would like to request that I cover a specific faction in the future of this series, feel free to comment down below. And if you enjoyed this episode of Grokking Twilight Imperium and you'd like to see me do more like it in the future, be sure to give this video a like, share it on all forms of social media, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on. And it's like that, you're most likely, oh, hi Nico. What's up? What's going on? What's going on? Is this a puppy blooper? Are you doing your one per video required puppy blooper? Mandatorily required? Yeah? What's up? Oh, you jumped on me, but then you're looking upstairs. Do you want to go upstairs? You can go upstairs. It's fine. Go ahead. Your mama's up there. What? Oh! Oh, that hurt. Could you not punch me in the groin? How about that? How about we try not doing that? Okay, you go down. Okay, you go down on the floor and you play with your toys. Okay. Okay. Go ahead. What is it? What can I do for you? What is it? What can I do for you? What is it? What do you want? What do you want? What you want? What you want? Oh, are you just not getting enough attention? Or is it only because I start filming? Every time I start filming, you're like, then that's when you want to have your attention. you're like laying on the couch doing nothing. I was like, oh, it's a good time for me to film. And then you're like, nope, you're filming. That means I need the attention. No, I need all of it now. Oh, I know. Okay. Go play with your toys, though, okay? Go play with your toys.